Hello everyone, and welcome back to Mudlick Creek Garage. As you can see, the Razor project has slowly spiraled out of control. All hopes for rebuilding rebuilding the Razor with the engine and the frame have diminished, and we have the engine out of the machine. So what we ended up having was the rod ended up being bent. So we have a brand new rod and bearing installed into the engine. You can do it without pulling the engine, but I couldn't get to the backside here where I had to get to undo the 12mm bolt that held the rod on, or 10mm, sorry. So pulled it out, was able to get to it. Didn't have to split the cases, did it with the cases together. So now, in this video, we are going to reassemble the top end and put the engine back in the machine. So, here we go. As I've said in previous videos, there's multiple ways to go about everything. But my first step is going to be putting the oil filter on, just so I don't get anything into there. But I'm also going to put a little bit of oil into the cap, because that'll be used throughout the engine assembly process to lubricate this miscellaneous engine components I put together. So we will throw a little bit of oil on this here seal, and we will thread this onto the machine. Now this machine will get a full Polaris oil change after the first couple, probably about the first hour of runtime, if not less, because it did get some metal into the pan that I had to clean out. So I don't want to go all out and spend 70 bucks on a Polaris oil change when it's going to get changed here in another hour. And most people run just regular old 1040 regardless. So I didn't think it made a difference. So next, we're going to get the piston installed, or the rings installed onto the piston, and the piston installed into the bottom end. For pistons, the obvious choice is Wiseco. Now, these are 10-to-1 compression pistons. It matches the good piston that's still in the machine. I am going to let you know that replace both pistons at the same time. The only reason we're only replacing one is this piston literally has maybe 200 miles on it, or actually a little over 200 miles on it. And that was when the valves on the passenger side cylinder failed. So this piston and the rings are basically brand new. I am going to go through and make sure they're indexed correctly for reinstallation though. So let me get the rings on this new Wiseco piston. Remember, stagger your rings, 180 out for the compression rings, and you're going to stagger the bottom three as well. Wiseco does give you a handy dandy installation sheet that you'll unfold, and they will tell you exactly how to put the rings on. Okay, so now that I have all the rings installed on the piston with the gaps correctly aligned per the Wiseco piston ring installation sheet, now comes the fun part, getting this in here and getting the jug on. So the 900 XP is kind of a pain in the butt because you can't do one piston at a time or put both in the jug and slide it on. You kind of got to do a finger ring compress thing. So I'm not going to get that on camera. It'll probably take me quite a while. But how I like to install wrist pins is I'm going to take the retainer clip here and install it in this side of the piston. Then I'm going to take the wrist pin and slide it in this side just far enough it doesn't protrude into the area where the rod needs to be. Then I'm going to put the piston on the rod, and I'm going to tap the wrist pin through and put the other retainer on. So quick tech tip with these Wiseco wrist pin clips. if your engine's out, number one, flip it on its side. It's easiest to get to the clip. Make your job 100 times easier. Number two, start one side and lay your clip in. You can see my clip has the end starting there in the pry point. So start your clip and then roll it in around the top. If you push it carefully, it'll go right in all the way around. These Weisco wrist pin clips are not easy to get in, and that's the easiest way I have found. So do not assemble this engine and forget your base gasket. I'll be the one to admit it. I just had this all together, and it's a pain because it's so miserable, and I fought it for about a half hour, and I realized this gasket wasn't there. So do not forget your base gasket. If you forget this gasket, you'll have coolant in the oil, and it's never a good day. Take the time, make sure your base gasket's there, make sure your dowel pins, this one's missing a couple dowel pins, but I made sure on the head, all the dowel pins were either A, missing, or B, not in a position that's gonna interfere with the dowel pin on here, because that'll hang you up as well. So I have the cylinder reinstalled. So, like I said, what you have to do is you have to put one piston in, rotate the engine, put the other piston in, then you have to do a slow shimmy to get all the rings in, and then you nice and carefully shimmy it down and on. That's the easiest way to do it. Unfortunately, with it just being me here in the shop, I could have set up some sort of camera angle, but it wouldn't have showed everything, and it wouldn't have been too intuitive and too helpful. So unfortunately, best I can do is describe it. So let me get this head thrown on, and we will get it all torqued down. Don't forget, put your head gasket in. That would be very bad if you didn't put your head gasket in. All right, let's get the head on. All right, so I have the head loosely on. I have 2 bolts just holding it in. They're tight, but they're not torqued. So my preferred way of installing head bolts is I like to take the threads of the bolt, dip them in oil, stick them in the hole, and then I like to run them down with some sort of electric ratchet just until they're snug. Don't go torquing on them with that, because you have to go through and actually do a torque on these here in a moment. All right, so now that all these are put in, we can get ready to torque these. To torque this cylinder head, the actual torque spec is 21 foot-pounds, and you're gonna 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The actual torque spec is 21 foot-pounds the first time, then you come around for a second round at 26. So I ran them in with the gun, and we're gonna call that 21. We're very close to it at least. Let me get her down to 26. Maybe it wasn't 21, but regardless, we're in good shape. 26. There's 26, and now the manual says take them a full 180 degrees. Now, this can kind of be a pain in the butt if it's on the bench and you have a buddy here to hold it. So I'm gonna do this off camera, and I'll be back when you're torqued, but you're gonna follow the same sequence, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 at 180. All of the head bolts are in and torqued down to the 180 degrees after the 26 foot-pounds. So here is where, if it was your own machine that you just tore apart, I would probably at this point put it back together, cams, set the timing, call it, check your lash, call it good. But this is actually a used head that I have no history on other than the guy said it was good. So I'm gonna go in and I'm gonna make sure underneath each of these caps the shims are present, because if they aren't and we start this thing, that'll be a nightmare. So I'm gonna go through, check, make sure all the shims are there, and we'll be back to set this thing to top dead center and time it. I have the top end of the machine all back together. It kicked my butt. I'm just gonna explain to you the timing. So depending on your machine is gonna depend whether you have a red mark on the flywheel or if you have to pull the stator cover off and line the mark in the flywheel up with the casting mark. So this machine has a red mark on the flywheel. So we're gonna be able to spin our flywheel until the red mark is present, right there. And at that point, there is lines which you can't really see on the intake and the exhaust, but so the E in the line is gonna run flat with the back, and the I with the line is gonna run flat on the front. Now, getting the front in, the intake side in, is a little bit of a challenge because you're going to have to play with the fact that you're depressing the passenger side intake valves in the same instance. Kind of like on the other side, you're gonna have to play with the fact you're depressing the driver's side exhaust valves. So you just gotta play with it. It takes a couple iterations, but make sure your intake and exhaust marks are flat with the head and your red mark in the casing is set. Now this machine has a automatic tensioner, so it's a little bit trickier because you gotta kind of put the automatic tensioner in, loosen it, play with it, but it is possible. It's a pain in the butt. So I'm gonna throw this valve cover back on. The engine is fully assembled now. Valve cover to oil pan, all new gaskets, one new piston. I put oil in the cylinders, spun it over, made sure everything spins freely. Now it's time to put the engine back in. We have the engine fully installed back in the machine. Now you are going to need a clutch alignment tool like we have here. And what this does is you push it all the way up on the transmission and all the way up on the engine with the clutch bolt installed. And it holds your center to center distance and doesn't allow any sort of swivel in the engine to transmission. This does have a little bit of play in it, but it's gonna control it to the point you're not eating belts. So there is a critical connection down here. There is 4 of these bolts with a jam nut. So what I did to combat the jam nut is I took a 1.1/8" socket, just a cheapie from AutoZone, and had the machine shop hog everything but that first 1/4 inch out of the socket. And that allows you to get a positive engagement on the jam nut and not spin the outer nut. So getting this connection properly torqued is a very important part of the process, because if you don't follow the torque spec exactly, you can crack your engine case, which is about $1,000 a piece, or $1,000 for the set, and then you're out everything you just did. So your torque spec is as follows. First, you're gonna torque this guy here, and that goes to 10 foot-pounds. Then you're gonna torque your jam nut, which that goes to 35 foot-pounds. And then you're gonna torque this bolt through the center, and that goes to 75. So you're supposed to buy new bolts every time you torque these, but we live in the real world here, and not many people are gonna spend $100 for new bolts to bolt these together. So you can reuse your old ones as long as the threads are fine and all that. So let me set up a little bit of a montage here, and we are going to reassemble this engine. quick note here, when you're putting all this together, you have to kind of consider where everything goes. So obviously all this needs to tuck between the crank or the clutch cover and the block. So you want to make sure you're not running anything down in here where it's going to be in the way or get pinched up against something. Really, it should be routed the same way it came from the factory, but unfortunately, you know, you tear something apart, it never goes back together the exact same way. As you can see, I did pull the top end of the engine back apart because the engine didn't have any compression after it was all assembled. So this happened because I was trying to be quick about it and save time. There's two separate valve, shim, and bucket combinations this engine can have. It can either have the one where there is no shim built into the bucket. It uses a separate puck style shim. This is used from 2011 to 2013. And then there is the 2014 shim, where you can see there is actually a boss built into the back of this cover that is your shim. So I used this head with the shims built in to the buckets with these cams, which weren't matched to these shims, so therefore the valve clearance was not correct. Now, this caused the intake valves to hang open and not have any compression. So what I have to do is I'm gonna have to pressurize these cylinders with my leak down tester and change these valve spring buckets out with the older style spring buckets. Minor setback, but it's extremely cheap to shim with the older style, whereas the newer style, it's about 30 bucks for each one of these caps. And the main problem with these is they're all oversized. So what that's gonna mean is you're just guessing to get the right shim. So that can get expensive quick. Let's pressurize these cylinders, get these valve spring buckets changed out, and we will be back. So this project slowly spiraled out of control. As you can see, the head is off the machine. I put the leak down tester on this cylinder, the passenger side, and I noticed excessive leak down coming from the exhaust port. So at first, I didn't think much of it, but I spun the valve around and it still was there. I was thinking maybe it got a piece of dirt in it. So pulled the head off, realized it actually has one bent exhaust valve. So this good used head apparently was not as good as it was said to be. So stole an exhaust valve off of the driver's side of the bad head. Hopefully it doesn't suffer the same casting issues that this guy did on the old head. So I'm going to continue to get these spring buckets converted over. Here's a good example of what the difference is between them. This one, you can just fit one of these here shims into. Sits right down in there to set your valve clearance, whereas on this one right here, if I can get the shim out, it'll set in there, but it doesn't have any sort of holder. So got to get them switched out so we don't have any issues. The head's back on the machine, torque down. Then you're going to set your timing. Either on certain models, you need to pull your stator cover and line it up with the casing, or in this case, it's a 2012 flywheel, so you can use the correct colored tooth shown into the crankshaft positioning sensor housing. So now that we have figured out our issue and retimed the machine, we're going to throw the valve cover back on, put the exhaust and the intake on, and see if the machine starts. The razor's all back together and on the ground. Engine's fully rebuilt. Everything's been reassembled. I did not get most of that on video because we just kind of got going, but you should fire right up. There she is. General overview of how to rebuild your Razor 900 XP. This does have a Muzzy exhaust on it, and it sounds pretty good as long as you're not the one riding behind it. Then you're deaf and your ears ring for the next day and a half. But thank you guys for watching Mudlick Creek Garage, and we'll see you on the next one.